get that like sinking feeling when your computer just crashes? Right when you're about to save something super important, or like, your favorite app just completely freezes when you absolutely need it?
Ugh, yeah, tell me about it. It's the worst.
The absolute worst. So today we're doing a deep dive into like why this kind of stuff happens.
Okay, yeah.
And it all comes down to something called memory safety in software. And honestly, this is way more important than most people realize.
You're totally right. It's a big one. These glitches that seem so small, they actually cost like billions of dollars every single year.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And Google is even saying that this is like eating away at our trust in technology.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And they actually just came out with this pretty intense like call to action in their blog post where they're calling for everyone to start using a standard way of measuring and improving memory safety in all software.
Okay, so for this deep dive, we're looking at this proposal from Google. And then also there's this pretty lively discussion about it on Slashdot.
Oh yeah, Slashdot, always a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But before we get into like the whole solution part of things, can you break down what the problem actually is? Like, what are memory safety bugs and why should we actually care?
Okay, so imagine you're in a library, right?
Okay.
But instead of a librarian who knows where every book is, there's this like confused robot.
Oh, no.
Yeah, running around, putting books in totally random spots, maybe even checking a few out the window.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and that is kind of what's happening with a memory safety bug.
Oh, okay.
So the software, it's like that robot, and it gets all mixed up about where data is stored in the computer's memory.
Okay, I think I get it. So, like, that makes sense why there would be problems. But, like, what kind of problems are we talking about here?
I mean, everything. Apps crashing, data getting all messed up, even like hackers getting in and stealing your information.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Google actually pointed out in their blog that just one type of memory safety bug, it's called a use after free vulnerability, that was responsible for over 70% of Chrome's high-severity security issues just in the past few years.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah.
That's huge. Okay, so Google is basically saying, like, hey, everyone, we really need to start taking this memory safety thing seriously.
Exactly.
So what's their actual proposal for fixing it?
So they're saying we need a common framework, right? Something that everyone in software can use to measure how memory safe their products actually are.
Okay, yeah.
So like clear criteria to say, okay, this software gets like a gold star for memory safety, or like this one over here needs a lot of work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of like a safety rating for software.
Exactly, yeah.
But don't we already have, like, ways to catch these bugs?
We do.
Why isn't that enough?
I mean, it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem, right? So it's reactive, not proactive. Google's saying we got to switch up our whole mindset. We need to design software with security in mind from the very beginning.
Uh-oh.
They call it the secure by design approach.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like building the security into the DNA of the software right from the start.
Exactly. Yeah.
But are they actually doing this themselves? Like, are they using this approach?
They say they are. They've been using languages like Rust more and more, which is designed to be memory safe. And they're also trying to, make the security of their existing code a lot better.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing not everyone is, like, super thrilled with Google kind of leading the charge on all this.
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely some pushback. We were looking at the comments on Slashdot, and opinions are, well, let's just say they're divided.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. One commenter, Fuzzy Fungus, I think, made a good point that other issues like data privacy or AI, maybe they're actually causing a bigger erosion of trust than just software glitches.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I guess it just depends on what people see as the biggest threat at the moment, right? Were there any comments that, like, surprised you at all?
One that really stood out to me was from a C++ developer, Acid F and Tonic.
Okay.
And they were actually, like, excited about Google's proposal.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they were saying they're tired of fighting these memory bugs all the time, and they'd welcome any tools or standards that could make their lives easier.
So even within the developer community, there are all sorts of opinions about this.
Yeah, totally.
Some see it as like a burden and others see it as like a chance to build better software.
Exactly.
Were there any like totally out there ideas in the comments?
Oh, for sure. Someone with the username FlySwatter suggested we just like completely rethink hardware.
Whoa.
Yeah, they said like build physical barriers into the computer chips that would, stop data and instructions from getting mixed up.
Whoa, okay.
That would eliminate a ton of memory errors right at the source.
Yeah, but that sounds like a pretty massive overhaul, like how computers are even designed.
It would be huge, yeah, no doubt. But, it just shows how some people are looking for these, like, really fundamental solutions to this whole memory safety thing.
Okay, so we've got Google pushing for standardization. We've got some skeptical voices. We've got developers who are both for and against it. And then we have people who want to, like, start a whole hardware revolution.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I feel like we've got a lot to unpack here.
We do.
What are your, like, initial thoughts on all of this?
Hmm.
Is Google's vision, like, is it actually feasible? And will it actually lead to, like, more secure software?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. I mean, Google's proposal could be a total game changer.
Yeah.
But there are some pretty big challenges, too.
Like what? Like what kind of roadblocks?
Well, software development is already so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And if we start adding all these new standards and requirements, it could actually make things even harder, especially for smaller companies and open source projects.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, there's a risk that too much bureaucracy could just, like, stifle creativity and innovation.
So finding that, like, balance between security and flexibility is going to be super key.
It is.
What about performance? Like, will these stricter memory safety standards make our software, like, slower
Yeah.
or more resource intensive?
That's a really good question because there often is a trade-off between security and performance.
Oh, okay.
And some solutions, especially those that involve like extra checks or hardware changes, they could definitely slow things down a bit.
So then how do we, like, weigh those trade-offs?
Yeah.
Like, is a little bit of slowdown worth it if we get a more secure system? And what role should governments play in all of this?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Some people are saying that governments need to step in with regulations to make sure companies are actually prioritizing security. But other people are worried that too much government involvement could, like, stifle innovation and maybe even create more problems than it solves.
It's such a, like, delicate balance to strike. So what does all this mean for us, like the average person who uses technology every day? How might these changes actually affect our experiences in the future?
I mean, that's a really great question. So if Google's vision actually works and these memory safety standards get adopted everywhere, it could mean a world where software crashes and security issues are just way less common.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Your devices would be more reliable, your data would be way more secure, and honestly, your trust in technology might even start to go back up.
Okay, so that sounds like a pretty positive outcome.
Yeah.
But what if things go in the opposite direction?
Well, then we might just keep seeing all these software glitches and data breaches and security exploits. And the costs, both like financially and in terms of that eroded trust, they'll probably just keep going up.
Yeah, the stakes are high.
They are. Hashtag TTS, the deep dive episode, 2025-03, Hour 1, Part 2 of 3.
It really feels like we're at, like, a turning point, you know? Like, do we just kind of accept that these software glitches are going to be a part of life forever? Or, like, do we try to push for something better, something way more secure? It's like this whole discussion about memory safety is part of this bigger question about how technology fits into our lives.
Yeah.
And what we actually, like, expect from it.
You're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. It's not just about, fixing these little bugs. It's about what we value in our tech, right?
Right.
And we're seeing this shift where people are like demanding more transparency, more accountability from the tech that we use every day.
Yeah.
Like, think about all the interest in explainable AI.
Yeah.
Where people want to know how these AI systems are actually making decisions. It's kind of the same idea, but for software in general.
Right, exactly. Like, we want to know that the systems we're using, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that they're doing it safely and securely.
Exactly.
Especially since we're, like, trusting them with so much stuff, like our finances, our health records, all our personal info. So I guess it's no surprise that people are starting to, demand a bit more rigor.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we're moving beyond just whether something works or how efficient it is.
Right.
It's also about security, privacy, ethical stuff. All that's coming to the forefront. It's like we're raising the bar for what it means for technology to be trustworthy.
So, like, how do we get there? Like, if we could just wave a magic wand and make a perfect system for building, really secure software, what would that even look like?
Oh, if I had a magic wand. Okay. I'd start with simplicity.
Okay.
Because complexity usually means, like, more vulnerabilities. So if systems are easier to understand and maintain, there are fewer places for those bugs to hide. So less spaghetti code, more like elegant modular designs.
So it's about making software that's not only like secure, but also easy to understand and work with.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What else would be on your like wish list for this perfect system?
Clarity, for sure. Like clear specifications, clear documentation, clear communication, like through the whole development process.
Yeah, yeah.
That could help avoid a lot of misunderstandings and catch potential problems early on.
So basically like laying a really strong foundation so we can avoid issues down the road.
Exactly.
It's like building a house, right?
Yeah.
If the blueprints are all confusing and no one's talking to each other, the whole structure is going to be unstable.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what else is super important? Collaboration.
Okay.
Like security can't just be, one small team's problem. Everyone involved, from the designers to the developers to the testers, everyone needs to feel like they can contribute to a secure outcome.
So it's a shared responsibility, kind of like a collective effort to build this secure and trustworthy system.
Mm-hmm.
What about after the software is, already out there being used? Like, how do we make sure that it stays secure?
That's where a really strong feedback loop is so important.
Okay.
We need ways to spot vulnerabilities quickly and then fix them, both while we're developing the software and after it's released. So continuous learning and improvement are essential. We should always be iterating, evolving our security practices based on, the latest research, new threats, and feedback from users.
So you're describing like this constant cycle of improvement.
Exactly.
Where we're always learning and adapting and building that into the process.
Okay.
But let's get back down to like reality for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we can't reach like perfect security, what are some things we can actually do to move towards this vision of more secure software?
Well, Google pushing for standardized memory safety, that's a huge step.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not solve everything, but at least it's getting everyone talking about it. It's encouraging the whole industry to think about security like proactively.
Yeah, but like we saw in those Slashdot comments, not everyone agrees that this is the right way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
What about like some of those concerns that people raised, like the commenter who was worried that, all these new regulations could actually stifle innovation,
Right.
especially for smaller companies or open source projects?
That's a valid concern. I mean, it's tough to get the balance right.
Yeah.
Like, how do you create regulations that actually work but don't end up being a huge burden? It's something that policymakers need to think about really carefully as the tech world keeps evolving.
It's like trying to find that sweet spot where we're promoting security, but we're also not like crushing the creativity and the agility that makes the software world so great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got to be like a super complicated issue
It is.
with probably like no easy answers.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a conversation that everyone needs to be a part of, not just policymakers. Like, we as users, we need to be thinking critically about these trade-offs.
Right.
Educating ourselves about the issues and speaking up about the solutions that we think will get that balance right between security and innovation.
Yeah, we talk about like digital literacy a lot, but maybe this needs to be part of that, like understanding the basics of software security.
Yeah.
The risks, how to protect ourselves.
I completely agree. Like, it's empowering to understand how things work,
Yeah.
behind the scenes and to be able to make informed choices about the tech that we use.
So bringing it back to the listener for a second, how can they start being like more proactive about their own security?
That's a great question. Well, for starters, choose software from companies that have a good track record when it comes to security. And then,
Right.
Pay attention to those security updates. And don't be afraid to, ask questions like, what are these companies actually doing to protect your data?
It's like voting with your wallet
Mm-hmm.
in a way,
It is.
like supporting companies that actually care about security. That sends a message to the whole industry.
It really does. And just being aware of the potential risks, right? Like, think about the websites you visit, the apps you download, the info you share online.
Yeah.
Simple things like using a strong password or being careful about those phishing scams, they can make a huge difference.
Those are really good practical tips. And like, it's important to remember that even if we can't get rid of all the risks, we can make them a lot smaller
Yeah,
just by being informed and proactive.
for sure. It's about taking ownership of our digital lives and making choices that prioritize security.
Okay. Well, this deep dive has taken us from like the itty-gritty details of memory bugs all the way to, these big picture questions about what we want from tech.
Yeah, it has.
It's been quite the journey.
It has. And we're not done yet. There's still so much to explore and discuss. Hashtag TTS The Deep Dive, episode 2025-0301, part 3 of 3.
You know, it's interesting. We started talking about all those, like, annoying software crashes.
Yeah.
But we ended up in this whole, like, big picture discussion about our relationship with tech in general.
Yeah.
Do you think most people, like, actually care about memory safety? Or is it more of a, like, a behind-the-scenes kind of thing?
That's a good question. I mean, most people probably aren't thinking about memory safety every day, right? They just want their devices to work, their apps to work.
Yeah.
They want their data to be safe. How it actually happens, it's not really something they're, like, actively thinking about.
Right. They care about the what, but not the how, necessarily.
Exactly.
But I do feel like there's this growing sense that, like, things aren't really working the way they should. Like, we keep hearing about these data breaches, security flaws, software glitches that are, like, causing real-world problems.
Yeah.
It feels like people are starting to realize that all this convenience and connectivity, it comes with some risks attached.
Absolutely. That trust is definitely starting to waver a bit.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, how do we bridge that gap between the tech experts who get all this memory safety stuff and the everyday users who just want their technology to work?
Yeah, it feels like a communication problem almost.
Yeah.
Like, how do you explain these, like, really complex technical issues to someone who isn't a programmer?
Yeah. Well, education is key.
Right.
We need to figure out how to talk about these things in a way that makes sense,
Yeah.
without all the jargon.
Yeah.
Like, think about how we teach kids about online safety.
Right.
We don't bog them down with all the technical details.
Right.
We give them practical advice that they can understand and use.
Right. Yeah.
And it's got to be the same for adults when it comes to software security.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about, like, the way we design software? Like, what if instead of hiding all the security settings in these, like, really complicated menus, we made them more, like, prominent, more user-friendly?
Yeah.
Could we give people more, like, feedback about how the choices they're making, how that actually impacts their security?
Those are great ideas. Yeah, security shouldn't be this, like, hidden, complicated thing that only experts get.
Right.
It needs to be part of the whole user experience.
So it's about going beyond just, like, technical fixes and thinking about the human side of things too.
Totally.
Making security more intuitive, more accessible, more, like, just built into how we use tech every day.
Absolutely. It's got to be this holistic approach
Okay.
where we're thinking about the tech stuff, the human stuff, and how all this plays out in society.
Right, the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so this deep dive has really shown that memory safety, it's not just a technical issue.
Right.
It's really a reflection of the values that we bake into our technology.
Yeah.
Security, reliability, trustworthiness, all that. Like, those things have to be front and center as we keep developing new software and hardware.
I totally agree. And the conversation doesn't, like, end here.
Right.
This is going to be an ongoing thing.
Right.
Exploring, debating, figuring out the right balance.
And that's where our listeners come in, right?
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, but we've only just, like, scratched the surface.
We have.
So what are your takeaways? What questions are still swirling around in your head? What do you think the future of software security should look like?
It's a future we're all creating together, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, by understanding these issues, asking those tough questions, demanding better from the tech we use, we can actually help build a digital world that's both innovative and secure.
It's true. Like, every time you choose a strong password or update your software or you think twice about the information you're sharing online, you're actually taking part in making a more secure digital world.
You are, and don't underestimate the power of just talking about it.
Right.
With your friends, family, colleagues, it raises awareness.
Right.
And it helps everyone understand what's at stake.
Well, this has been such a thought-provoking deep dive into this topic that, honestly, we don't talk about enough.
I know, it's true.
What are, like, some final words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners with?
Remember that technology, at the end of the day, it's a tool.
Yeah.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
Right.
But the more we understand how it works, the better we can use it safely, responsibly, and ethically. So stay curious, stay informed, keep asking those questions.
I love that. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on the software that powers our world.
Yeah.
And how important memory safety is in creating a more secure future for all of us. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.